Welcome back to Singapore Property Talk Law. I'm Damien. And wow, these recent changes to the electoral boundaries for GE 2025 really have got people talking, right? Especially, those of us who are, well, a little obsessed with property.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm Serene, and you know what? We're going to look at these changes almost like they're a treasure map, showing us where those potential property hotspots might be.
I love that. A treasure map. Brilliant. So
Okay.
we've got a couple of key things to work with today, right? We've got the Straits Times interactive map and article. That's going to be our game board.
Yeah.
And then we've got the official white paper. This is from the Electoral Boundaries Review Committee, so that'll be our decoder ring, I guess.
Exactly. So starting with the big picture.
Yeah.
Singapore now has 33 electoral divisions. We've got 15 single-member constituencies, those are the SMCs,
Right.
and 18 Group Representation Constituencies, or GRCs.
Yeah.
So think of the GRCs like mini districts. They've got a team of MPs representing them, and the SMCs, they're smaller, maybe like single neighborhood areas with just one MP.
Right, got it. So basically, we have more MPs now in total, right? We're at 97 compared to the previous 93. But why the shakeup? Like, why all these changes now?
Well, it's really all about keeping things fair, balanced.
Right.
The population has shifted. There's new housing developments popping up all over the place.
Yeah.
And we need to make sure that each MP represents, roughly the same number of voters.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. But now, this is where it gets really interesting, I think, for all the property-minded people listening to us right now.
Yeah.
These population shifts, the new developments, they're like these giant flashing arrows, right? Pointing to where the action is going to be in the property market.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And, let's take Jurong, for example. It's been completely split. So now we've got two new 5-member GRCs and a brand new SMC.
Wow.
That's not just redistricting. That's like a sign. Like, they've got some serious development plans in the works.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to wonder, what's the government got up their sleeve, right? Could this be linked to the Jurong Lake District Master Plan? Maybe. They're trying to turn it into, a second CBD, after all.
You're catching on, because when we see this level of change in the electoral boundaries, it's a pretty good sign that the government is anticipating major growth in that area and, planning for the future.
So what you're saying is, if you buy property near a newly formed GRC, it's like,
Yeah.
you're getting in on the ground floor. You're getting in early before everything booms.
I wouldn't say it's quite that simple.
Okay.
But, I mean, you're thinking along the right lines. These changes are clues. They're pointing towards future infrastructure projects, amenities, the overall development of the area. Combine that with some other factors, the economic trends, and then you start to get a much clearer picture of where the property market might be heading.
Okay, so Jurong is one to watch. What other hotspots are, flashing on our electoral map?
Well, let's have a look at Pasir Ris Punggol. No more mega GRC there. Instead, we've got two new 4-member GRCs.
Okay.
Punggol
Right.
and Pasir Ris Changi,
Uh-huh.
and Punggol West SMC.
Yeah.
Gone. It's been absorbed into the new Punggol GRC. I think that's a pretty clear indication of where the focus is shifting.
I agree. Punggol going solo, like having its own GRC, that's intriguing. I mean, it's already, known for its waterfront living. Very family-friendly vibe. Could this be a sign that it's, going to become the next big property powerhouse?
It's definitely possible, especially with all the effort the government is putting into transforming Punggol Digital District into, a hub for innovation and technology.
So we got Jurong,
Yeah.
we've got Punggol. What about, are there any changes that might suggest, maybe areas to avoid or at least approach with a bit more caution?
That's a good question. I mean, it's not necessarily about identifying bad areas.
Right.
It's more about maybe highlighting areas where growth might be a little slower, or where the focus is more on, revitalizing what's already there rather than like rapid expansion.
Got it. So like, for example,
Okay, let's look at Marine Parade. It's got a brand new name, Marine Parade Bradell Heights GRC.
I remember that, yeah.
And it's gotten bigger. It's swallowed up the McPherson SMC.
Yeah, I remember when that was announced. I think a lot of people were, scratching their heads a little bit, trying to figure out what it all meant.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting because Marine Parade is already, quite established. So this move, what it might signal is that the focus is going to be on upgrading the existing infrastructure, maybe improving the amenities, rather than, these massive new developments.
So for investors, I guess if you're looking for that, huge explosive growth, maybe Marine Parade isn't the best option. But for those who, value that kind of stability established communities still could be quite appealing.
Exactly. It all comes down to understanding, the subtle differences, the nuances of these changes, and then, thinking about your own investment goals, your preferences. What are you looking for?
Okay. All right. So we've talked about the big shifts, but there's also been like an increase in SMCs. We've gone from 14 to 15 now, right?
Right.
What's the significance of that?
It means that there's going to be a greater emphasis on like really local, hyper-local issues. Remember, the SMCs represent those smaller, tighter communities. So this increase suggests that we're moving towards more focused representation. And that could mean more targeted development initiatives as well.
So rather than just looking at those big GRCs, it's worth zooming in, looking closely at those new SMCs.
Absolutely. So take Jurong Central, for example.
Jurong Central. Okay. Yeah. One of the newbies.
Mm-hmm.
The white paper tells us it's a mix of the old Jurong GRC and Yuhua SMC.
Yeah.
But, I mean, what does that really tell us about the area?
Well, we need to dig a little deeper. We need to look at the specific polling districts that make up Jurong Central. And this is where the Straits Times map, that interactive map we were talking about, it comes in really handy. Because each polling district has, its own unique characteristics, demographics, existing amenities. It even might have, en-bloc potential. So by understanding, what makes up Jurong Central, we can start to get a feel for its potential.
Right. So it's not just about where the lines are drawn on the map. It's about what's inside those lines.
Exactly.
This is fascinating. Okay, we've got Jurong Central on our list. Any other new SMCs that stand out to you?
Well, how about Jalan Kayu?
Jalan Kayu, okay.
It's been carved out of Angmo Kyo GRC. It's a really intriguing mix. It's got the old and the new there.
Jalan Kayu it is. Let's dive into that one.
Jalan Kayu. It's made up of, the first 10 polling districts from what used to be Angmo Kyo GRC.
Interesting, because Jalan Kayu, it has that, charming village atmosphere,
Yeah.
But then, at the same time, you see a lot of redevelopment happening. So knowing exactly which bits of Angmo Kyo GRC they've taken out to make this new SMC, I think it gives us a glimpse into how maybe property values will change, how the lifestyle might evolve in this area, that mix of, old and new.
It's a great example of that balancing act we see everywhere in Singapore,
Right.
preserving our heritage, but also embracing progress. And that tension, it often shows up, it plays out in the property market.
It really does. And speaking of property, I think it's time to zoom out a little bit, maybe connect these electoral boundary changes to, Singapore's overall development strategy. Yeah. It's almost like, I don't know, we're using these changes as a decoder ring to understand where the government thinks the future is, where they're placing their bets.
Exactly. When we see these new GRCs, these new SMCs popping up in certain areas, it often means that's where the government expects growth. They're planning for future needs there. It's like, getting a sneak peek at their urban planning playbook.
So like with Jurong, the fact that they've split it up into multiple constituencies, that suggests, okay, they're expecting a huge population boom, which means, more housing, more amenities, more everything.
Right. And that creates a ripple effect in the property market. You've got increased demand, could push prices up. But it also means, hey, there's opportunities for new developments, maybe some savvy investments.
So I guess if you're thinking long term, if you're serious about property, these electoral boundary changes are like, I don't know, having a crystal ball, right?
Yeah.
Not a perfect one, but still.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a guaranteed fortune teller or anything.
Of course.
But it's a valuable piece of the puzzle. You combine it with economic trends, infrastructure development, how people are feeling about the market, then you can start to make more informed decisions.
Okay, so let's get practical. For our listeners who are, really keen on understanding the Singapore property scene, what are some, key takeaways from all of this, from all this electoral map reading we've been doing?
Okay, first, I'd say definitely pay attention to those new constituencies and areas where there have been big boundary changes, because those are often the zones that are primed for growth, for development, and that could mean, hey, property hotspots.
Okay, makes sense. What else?
Don't just stop at the surface. Dive deeper, look at the specific polling districts within those new constituencies, that really granular level. That's where you'll find those micro-location insights, like the demographics, what amenities are already there, even that en-bloc potential. That's how you know you're a serious property player.
Right, that's where the Straits Times interactive map becomes your best friend, right?
Exactly.
Zoom in, explore, really get a feel for the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Okay, and finally, any advice on, I don't know, how to translate all of this knowledge into, smarter property decisions? We don't want people just hoarding maps. We want them to make moves.
You're right. I would say don't get caught up in the hype, the short-term stuff. Think about the long-term implications. Where is the government putting its money? What kind of infrastructure projects are coming up? What's the vision for these areas in the next 5, 10, even 20 years? That's how you build a property portfolio that lasts.
Think long-term, everyone. The property market, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And speaking of marathons, we've covered a lot of ground today. We've talked about the big picture, the hot spots, those rising SMCs, and why all of this matters to you, our property enthusiasts.
It really does. And before we wrap up, I just want to leave our listeners with a little something to think about.
Oh, I love a good brain teaser. Hit me with it.
Okay, so of all these new or reshaped constituencies, which one do you think is going to see the most dramatic property value shifts in the next 5 years? And why?
Oh, that's a good one. I'm already thinking. Listeners, we want to hear your predictions. Head over to our website or social media. Let us know which constituency you think is going to be the next big thing in property. But before you do that, let's take a look at one more area that's caught our eye.
Okay, let's talk about Tampines Chengkat, another new SMC. It's been carved out of Tampines GRC.
Tampines Chengkat, right? Known for, those mature HDB estates. Very convenient location. What makes this one stand out to you?
Well, it's interesting because it's got some of those newer developments too, like the ones around Tampines Quarry Park. So you've got this blend of established housing and newer stuff. Could be a really interesting case study seeing how property values respond to the electoral boundary changes.
Yeah, it's like a microcosm of what we're seeing all over Singapore. Those established areas being, rejuvenated with new developments. And that raises a good question. How will these electoral boundary changes affect the potential for en bloc redevelopment, especially in areas like Tampines Chengkat?
That's something a lot of homeowners and investors are asking. Because on block sales, they can have a huge impact on property values.
For sure. I mean, if you have an older estate and suddenly it's within a new constituency that's, expected to grow, well, that could make it much more attractive to developers.
Exactly. And we've seen that before. In the past, electoral boundary changes sometimes, that happen at the same time as a surge in en bloc activity.
So for anyone living in those mature estates, keep a close eye on these boundary changes and any potential shifts in en bloc potential. Could be a game changer.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power, especially when it comes to the Singapore property market. The more you understand these trends, these little nuances, the better prepared you'll be to make smart decisions.
So true. Okay, folks, we've covered a lot of ground today. From Jurong to Punggol to Jalan Kayu to Tampines Chengkat, we've analyzed the maps, figured out the changes, and hopefully we've given you the insights you need to navigate this exciting world of Singapore property.
And don't forget that Straits Times interactive map. It's a great tool for, really exploring these changes in detail.
Absolutely. Use it to zoom in on your own neighborhood, understand your constituency, see how these boundary changes might impact your property journey. And remember,
happy property hunting.
Really is, yeah. I mean, that map's amazing. It's like, you've got your own personalized guide to the whole Singapore property landscape.
And it's not even just about finding, the next hot area, the next big thing. It's about understanding, what are the forces, what are the things that are shaping our city, how it develops, and then how all of that can affect, the decisions you make about property.
Yeah, that's what we're all about here, right? On Singapore Property Talk Law. We don't just want to give you the news. We want to help you understand what it all means, how you can use it to your advantage.
Exactly. So keep those property questions coming in, send them our way, and we'll keep diving deep, keep bringing you those insights, help you navigate this market because it's always changing.
It's always changing. That's for sure. All right. Until next time, everyone.
Happy property hunting.
Happy property hunting.